All right, good morning, everybody. How are you? Good morning. Is everybody awake? You're going to be, because I will not let you sleep. Those of y'all who don't know me, you're going to get to meet our team with Healthy Together and Feeling Great. I'm glad that you're here. The one thing I will tell you, the first church that I ever pastored, yes, I am an ordained clergy, but don't hold that against me. I had a little old lady that fell asleep every time. Within 3 weeks, she never fell asleep again. People do not fall asleep when I'm up here. So I'm so glad that you're here. And our presentation today is Metabolic Health Uncovered, a holistic panel approach, or in other words, it's a tale of two biomes. And so I'm excited that you're here today. I want to introduce our team to you, starting with our doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Gagliano, and I am so happy to be here and get to talk to you about this. I am a dentist of 30 years. I have practiced here in Alaska and done a number of, I think anything that you can do in dentistry, I've probably done it, from private practice to public health to teaching and so forth and so on. So one of the things I'm most excited about is I'm a cancer survivor, but I'm also someone who has reversed their chronic disease. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes 2 years ago. And with what we're going to talk about today, I was able to reverse or get in remission, however you want to use that term. I no longer have it. So my A1C is back to normal range.
All right. So, and our pharmacist.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. My name is Charlene, and I am a pharmacist for 32 years. Done all kinds of pharmacies, specialty pharmacy. Started out in Indian Health Service, and now I do community health, and I've developed a passion for really healing people, kind of getting away from seeing the same patients every month with more and more medication, and just feel like there's another way. So I am in the health and wellness space as well as practicing pharmacy. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm Ken, and yes, I'm an ordained clergy, and part of me is I'm tired of 30 years of sitting in hospital rooms with people that are getting ready to have legs and arms amputated and sitting with people that are sick when there are answers and helping people. And so I became a nutrition coach after, like Dr. G. You'll get to know a little bit of our story through the course of the week, that we are actually a couple. And we were both diagnosed with diabetes within 2 months of each other and have been on this journey together, which is why we come on in. We're glad that you're here. So I want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. As nurses, we recognize that you are the front line of so much. And so today, I don't know if y'all know each other. There's people from all over. So I'm going to give you a charge. Now, I know this is one of those things that I hated every time I came to a conference when somebody said to stand up. But you have a challenge right now. Is I want you to come here or out there, go find 10 people who you don't know. You have 5 minutes. Go meet 10 people. If they're in this room, get up. You cannot sit down. Everybody get Alright, we got 4. How many's got more than 4? Come on now. Gotta meet people. Come on.
Hi, I'm Katie. Katie, I'm Laura. Nice to meet you. Lauren.
Nice to meet you. I'm Ginger.
Nice to meet you, Ginger. I'm Lauren.
Yeah, where?
I'm here in Anchorage.
You're here in
Yeah.
Anchorage.
I'm originally from here. Nice to meet you. I'm from, originally from Louisiana. I'm going to talk about that, and we actually have a business presentation tomorrow, and we'll dive even deeper. Today, we're going to talk about the science and how this works, but yeah, I'll go into a lot of that. I'll touch on it a little bit today, but tomorrow we're going to dive into it. Yeah, where are you from? Oh, perfect. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Jennifer.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right. Here's my husband.
I know. All right, okay. Jennifer, all right, I'm at 10. Come on, y'all. Let's go. We don't want to get in front of other people's stuff. Okay, so I'll measure it. Has everybody meet 10? Everybody got 10 or close to 10?
We should have met everyone in the room.
Yeah, just about a problem. You may have a couple of extra ones. Okay, so now the question that I have for you is, when you met those 10 people, who was sick? Everyone.
She's on to something.
How dare you steal our presentation?
Yeah, it's okay. She's on to something. She's right.
Okay, that's it.
Can't tell.
All right, come here, presentation. Are you kidding me? Of course it's gonna do that. So 93% of us in the US and around the world now are metabolically unhealthy. Let that think in just think for a second. When you're driving here today, you pass 10 cars, that means 9 of the people driving those cars were sick. So we have a problem, and as we kind of already indicated, we know because we had that problem. All 3 of us did, and so many others. And I suspect you as nurses, you go to work every day and you see the problems, and you see people with the problems coming back again and again and again. So what is that problem? Well, like I said, we have the problem, and it is metabolic health, but there's more to it than that. Dr. G, would you kind of address this a little bit more for us?
Sure. So what we're going to talk about today is metabolic syndrome. And what is it? Metabolic syndrome is having 3 or more of the following out of whack, is what I like to say. So if you have low HDL cholesterol, high fasting blood sugar, large waist circumference, that means a circumference that is larger than half your height. Okay, high triglycerides and high blood pressure. If you have 3 or more of those, you are metabolically sick. However, if you take medication to keep those in line, you're metabolically unhealthy. And that's what we're going to go into today. We're going to go into more of that. So these are signs, but then this also, as this is the silent background, then it leads to symptoms. And these don't show up, for any concern for us, really. At first, you start, start getting a headache, or your vision gets blurry. You start eating a lot. You have these cravings, salty, sweet. You just cannot stop eating. You start gaining weight. You get thirsty. You can't ever get a hold of that. You start developing dark patches of skin. It's acanthosis nigricans. You're probably familiar with it. If you're not, that is not something that you can rub off. Another good indication is skin tags. They're not normal. They're not normal. Tingling in the hands and feet. We may just wake up, sometimes, and all of a sudden, oh, well, that's just normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. And constantly fatigued, always tired, can never seem to get enough energy. So all these symptoms are signs from the signs that are occurring that I always like to say, your body whispers long before it screams. And I know, Ken, you're going to talk about that.
Right. This gives a great a way to approach it. What we call the plagues of prosperity today. The current pathophysiology, as you probably all are aware, is we start really, as much as we talk about nutrition and eating correctly and healthy lifestyle, our pathophysiology typically is always, let's go to what medications can we give to treat a particular chronic disease and condition. Now, Charlene, you are the one that probably sees this right out of the gate.
Yes, this is some of what has changed how I like to practice and impact people. All of these conditions are carry with them 1 to 3 medications each. So as you all know, as practicing nurses, as you see in clinic and hospital and such, people are on an average of 7 to 10 medications daily. And so, yeah, each of these conditions lead to another condition, lead to a side effect, which leads to another medication.
So if you go to the doctor, or you probably have patients that, at least I saw this in the clinic, there's a pill, I call it pill for every ill. They go in, oh, they have, a problem with migraines, they're gonna give you a medication. Acid reflux, you're gonna get a medication. Something's wrong with, you have arthritis, they're gonna give you medication. There's a medication for everything that ails you up there. But that's not what the root cause is. They're just masking the symptoms. They're masking with the medication for what's to come.
Right. So I like to think about it this way. Me being a pastor, Dan, I like to tell a story every now and then. think about when you were a kid and or you're a parent now, and it's, we're fall now, but this summer your kids were out playing or you were out playing and mom or dad called your name. Karen! It's almost dinner time, right? You know it's almost time to come in. But you still got time, right? Sally! About 20 minutes later. And then 30 minutes later you hear, Kenneth Lee Hagler, and you better get your ass in the house, right? You know what's coming. That's what we're talking about. We went from what was these things with your body whispering to our body screaming, but then we never addressed the root cause of insulin resistance. Now, this is a term you may have heard. It may be one that is coming out more and more, but ultimately, we're talking about what is the root cause, and we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Again, looking at pathophysiology is oftentimes we start to look at things like arthritis, erectile dysfunction, PCOS, childhood obesity, and we get a medication, and oftentimes it's talked about that these things are what leads to insulin resistance. But we're going to show today, in large part, that insulin resistance has so much to do. When we talk about metabolic syndrome, we are talking about how your body is processing the foods and the drinks that we are consuming every single day. It's what we are doing to the terrain. Now, if you're familiar with the theory, going back to Pasteur and Béchamp, this idea between terrain theory and bacterial theory, germ theory, that's really what we're going back to, about looking at which one won. Well, we pretty much know which one won, but are they really diametrically opposed? Or do really they work together? And part of what we're going to talk about is we're not downplaying medications. What we're talking about is going after the root cause and our metabolic health. And we're going to unpack that a little bit more. And Dr. G, this is important again, because we're looking at things that are based in the science. And so tell us a little bit more about, we talked about some of the signs, and really metabolic syndrome has to do with that. But what about insulin in particular?
So a lot of times what will happen is, you'll order these tests. You'll get your full lipid panel, you get your full CBC, and they'll test for an A1C, which is great. I mean, we want to have that marker. But behind the scenes, something else is going on, and your insulin is riding high. And they don't test for insulin, and the reason why is because there's no money in bringing insulin down. There's nothing that brings insulin down. We're going to talk about, there's no medication that brings insulin down. We're going to talk about what can bring that down. But in the background, insulin's riding high. You're swimming in insulin for years before all these things start happening, making you insulin resistant. So how can you tell? What can you do? There's a couple of things. Ask for a fasting insulin test. Okay, that's number one. There's a couple other ways, but one of the easiest ways is take your most recent lipid panel, write this down because nobody's going to give this to you, okay? Or take a picture of it. You're going to take your triglycerides, your total triglycerides, and you divide them by your HDLs. So if anything is less than 2, less than 1 is better, okay? You are insulin sensitive. Your body is doing what it should, okay? Greater than 2, you are insulin resistant. And if you are greater than 3, you're highly insulin resistant and you all those signs and symptoms are precursors of other things that are gonna start happening. And if they haven't happened, it's only a matter of time. I say they haven't happened yet.
Great. So let's go back one more slide. I want to go back to this one just to explain a little bit more about what's happening with insulin resistance. Normally in our bodies, when we're consuming food and food that we're eating becomes glucose in our mouths, when the body starts to break that down, insulin is that anabolic hormone. That's that master hormone that's going to take the glucose, and ultimately, once it gets into the bloodstream, it's going to put it in the cells. Insulin acts is like that key that opens up the cell so your body can receive glucose. When it's into the bloodstream, and then insulin is then able to take that glucose and those cells to your brain, to your liver, to all of the organs that you need to use that for energy. But what is continuing to happen is we're going to go through and talk about with insulin resistance, which is going to lead to the chronic diseases, is that anabolic hormone is trying to unlock the cells, but our cells are already full of glucose. The cells now become insulin resistant at that point. So then what happens is the glucose and the insulin is setting in the bloodstream and it's trying to do what it can. Insulin is going to store it any place that it can. It stores it in the brain. It's going to store it around our organs like the liver. We get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We start to see it building up throughout so many places. And eventually insulin, of course, loses the battle. And now we're dealing with what? Type 2 diabetes. And now arguably type 3 diabetes with Alzheimer's, because our body is not handling. And we're going to talk about there are ways that we can address this. And that's what we want to talk about today. Now, one of the things that we often don't talk about enough, and Charlene, we're going to bring you into this because there's a lot of medications that are contributing to this.
Yes, so these 5 drug classes, the medications used to treat them that fall in this drug class are in like the top 25 drugs prescribed. How are they linked to insulin resistance? Corticosteroids, your examples, prednisone, deltazone, they're used in acute situations for emergencies to bring down swelling. That's important. In dental, you probably work for those as well. But some people are on these long-term for different diagnoses. When you're on these long-term, it can have detrimental effects. What it does, it sparks gluconeogenesis. So that is the production of production of glucose from your liver. Beta blockers, thiazide diuretics, a lot of those are being prescribed. Heart disease is the #1 killer still after many years. So a lot of people are on those 2 beta blockers, your examples of atenolol, metoprolol, those decrease the glucose reuptake at the level of the muscle. So prevents the inefficient muscle use to bring in the glucose. Statins, we're going to unpack that a little more in the next few slides, so I won't say much there, but that does increase your hemoglobin A1C. And then antidepressants are obesogens. For the most part, they increase appetite, they increase weight gain, thereby leading to obesity.
Right. So in particular, I know Dr. G, you talk about this one a little bit, and you saw this in the clinic, I believe, a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess back in around 2015, 2013, somewhere around there, I started seeing patients were coming in and I started seeing more and more patients on the statin medication. I was like, what is going on? But what concerned me more was that these patients were getting younger and younger. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Couldn't figure it out. And finally, after doing some research, found out that, guess what? The guidelines changed. If you're an adult between 40 and 75 years of age with an LDL-C of 70 to 189, you're put on a statin for preventive. Just because. Dollars, guys. If it doesn't make sense, it makes dollars. So no wonder. And this was without even having a history of diabetes or any cardiovascular risk. And I was like, what the hell? So, and then that leads to, we're going to show this in a little bit, what all that can contribute to. And it's a pharma loop.
All right. So I'm going to turn this back over to Charlene because she knows this stuff probably better than any of us when we come to this.
So statins and their relationship to weight gain and insulin resistance. So currently 2025, right now, atorvastatin is the #1 medication prescribed for and billed. How does that affect insulin resistance? It impairs your mitochondria. You might remember that's the powerhouse. This is our energy center. So if your mitochondria is not working well, you're talking about weakness, less energy, brain fog, those sorts of things. It also will decrease your CoQ10 at that level. Disrupts insulin signaling and muscle pain. Those kind of two go together. There's a diagnosis, of black box warning for rhabdomyolysis with the statins, in particular Lipitor. But how does that work? Well, if the insulin can't get into the muscle cells, it can't decrease insulin. So it continues swimming, and then the whole cascade of increasing your pancreas's signaling to produce insulin. And then it raises blood sugar and the hormone disruption, in particular, the decrease in testosterone.
One of the other things too is that statins are the #1 prescribed medication, but heart disease is the #1 thing that's cause of death. That doesn't make sense. If they're working, why is heart disease, cardiovascular disease, COPD, all of those things, stroke, still the #1 thing that unalives us? We do a lot of TikTok, so I have to be careful with my words sometimes. So unalive is one of those that they allow.
Well, and I think it's also addressing health span versus lifespan. We talk so much about lifespan, but what is the health span that people are experiencing today? So yes, we've got people living longer still, but what is their health looking like? And that's a big part of it, what we're talking about.
Metformin's first line, if you all know, first line for pre-diabetes, or type 2 diabetes, either one of those, as well as it used to be used quite a bit for PCOS and probably might still be. I don't see it as much anymore, but definitely they saw some advantages there. And again, the mitochondria suppression. So you can imagine if you're on this and a statin, the hit that your mitochondria is taking. Thyroid suppression, T4 is an inactive compound, T3 is the active, that's converted in the stomach. And here, metformin also disrupts the microbiome. So you get suppression of the thyroid. Cravings increase because, again, your mitochondria is affected, so you don't have as great energy sources. That depletes your vitamin B12. This is something that's very common that patients aren't being told. They need to replace that vitamin B12. They get the tingling in their feet and their hands, and what happens is they usually get Neurontin for that. They get gabapentin, so they get added another medication. And then the cycle, you can imagine how the cycle is now growing and continuing.
And now the most popular.
You can't keep them on the shelf, they're flying out the door, GLP agonists. So we produce our own GLP. This is something that actually was a surprise to me even, that we produce our own. This is an analog. So this is a synthetic GLP that's supposed to do the same thing, which is cut off the brain noise, satiety,
Makes you feel fuller longer.
so you don't eat as much, so you lose weight. The problem is some of the side effects, gastroparesis, which that's part of why they're losing weight. It keeps food in their stomach longer. However, the medullary cancer is not so good. The sarcopenia and osteopenia, which are the decrease in bone and then the decrease in muscle loss, which is not regained a lot of times. It's hard to gain that back. And 40% of those patients that are prescribed these medications, these injectables, and using them, 40% of them will get that decrease in bone and tissue, sarcopenia and osteopenia, and then ischemic optic neuropathy. So if you ditch all that,
Well, and we're gonna try into where this goes, but the ischemic optic neuropathy is personal to me because it is metabolic health. I have ischemic optic neuropathy, which they studied is that in basically 1/3 of people that are on these medications are likely going to lose part of their vision, which is what I have, which is a stroke in the optic nerve. Mine came about from heart disease. Again, we're going to talk about that as it relates to metabolic health. This is contributing something. So if anybody would like to lose part of their vision,
It's a real thing.
this is a real thing, and it's not fun. So, but Dr. G, you saw this in particular. Put this together for us a little
Yeah,
bit.
so I touched on this a little bit about the pharma loop. So what this is that you're taking one medication, remember that pill for every ill? And that leads to another medication because you have the side effect from something that other medication caused. So let's start with the most common one, statin, atorvastatin. Now this pharma loop can be anything. I just happen to pick this one because I saw this a lot in the dental chair. So the patient came in, they were on atorvastatin. I hadn't seen them in, 6 months. They came in for their checkup and they told me they're on a statin. Like, why? Well, I have high cholesterol. Okay. Then next time I see them, they're on metformin because they have now they've been diagnosed as pre-diabetic. Well, that's because the atorvastatin causes diabetes because it's a disruptant in your insulin receptors. Okay. So then next time I see them, say a year later, they have high blood pressure. And then because that metformin depletes B12, they're also taking gabapentin because they have neuropathy now. So then this leads to some other things because now they're having stomach issues. All right, so then they put on omeprazole or esomeprazole, and then they start to gain weight and they start to get depressed. Then they go in and they put on Zoloft. So then, or any of the other SSRIs, okay? So then the next thing you know, they find themselves in the ER and they have a cardiac arrhythmia. Oh my God, no one told them that. They thought they were having a heart attack. No, it's a cardiac arrhythmia because that atorvastatin, it depletes CoQ10. What does CoQ10 do? Causes the ability for your heart. It does a lot of things, but it also keeps the rhythm of your heart. So now they're put on metoprolol, which is a beta blocker. Another with its friend lisinopril to help with regulation of your blood pressure and your cardiac rhythm. Next thing you know, I see them about 1.5 years, 2 years later. They're on Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, all that stuff because of they're a full-blown diabetic because the omeprazole that they were taking and the metformin wasn't really working. The omeprazole along with the atorvastatin they were taking, full-blown diabetes. And I'd see this over and over again. I could not figure it out.
But you did because you saw it happening to people all the time. As a
Yeah.
dentist,
So that was the other thing. Not only did I see all that happening, but I also saw periodontal disease rise. And it was increasing at a lower age group, but it was increasing, like skyrocketing. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Well, there is a correlation between heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. Patients that had developed heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease was found to have the same bacteria that was in periodontal disease. And that causes insulin resistance. Now, we know that Alzheimer's disease is now called type 3 diabetes. Heart disease, we've already talked about, and how its correlation with insulin resistance. But let's talk about diabetes, okay? Diabetes, I was able to diagnose many of my patients before they even knew it, that they had diabetes. When they come in the chair, they were constantly bleeding, high inflammation, and they were like, I don't know what's going on. I keep brushing my teeth. I'm like, well, there's a problem. You have something systemic is going on. And I'm suspecting it's diabetes. Go get a blood test. And they come back and their A1C would be fine. I'm like, that's not it. And I'm saying, yeah, that is it. And about a year or so later, they would have a high A1C and they'd be a diabetic. So what's happening here? So periodontal disease and diabetes have a bidirectional relationship. If you have diabetes, you're more than likely to develop periodontal disease. If you have periodontal disease, you're more than likely going to develop diabetes. And the next slide, I'll go through that because digestion starts in the mouth. So we start with that lovely hamburger, okay? Digestion starts in the mouth. Carbohydrates are processed in the mouth by salivary amylase into simple sugars. And they form dental plaques, not the plaque in your arteries, not that I'm talking about the plaque on your teeth, that white fuzzy stuff, okay? If it's not brushed away in time, in a timely manner, or brushed away effectively, it leads to inflammation. And the more and more we get on our teeth in the form of calculus or plaque, It's gonna elevate our cytokines and white blood cells because our body sees that as a site of injury and wants to get rid of it. But over time, we then eat again, we don't brush our teeth, we don't floss, or we don't do it effectively, and you get more and more formation of dental plaque. And then what happens is the bacteria, those pro-inflammatory cytokines, they go into this craze of, okay, we're gonna disrupt insulin pathways because inflammation, something's wrong, you gotta fix it. So they disrupt the insulin pathways and get the wrong signal, and then the insulin does not allow the glucose to go into the cell for you to use as energy. What happens to it? It has a job to do. It's gonna put it, just like Coach Ken said, it's gonna put it in our brain, it's gonna go and put it in our liver, it's gonna put it in our skin. It's gonna put that glucose and store it as fat, visceral fat's the worst, somewhere, because it's gotta do something, and it's gotta store it somewhere. And so over time, what happens is, when you are a diabetic, you're gonna have more and more of your diabetes out of control because your periodontal disease is causing inflammation. So when you're a diabetic, you have already you're in an immunocompromised state, right? So you're gonna be more susceptible to infection. Periodontal disease is a bacterial infection. So periodontal disease leads to diabetes. Diabetes is gonna lead to increased periodontal disease once it's out of control. So where we wanna start is insulin resistance, the root cause, and by keeping, periodontal disease, keeping that in check and preventing it at all costs. So,
Right.
now, that talks about nutrition. So I know this is where you're gonna go ahead and talk about what we eat, how we eat, and how that's important because with protein, fat, and carbohydrates, where we need to go with that.
Right. So I'm gonna throw this out there. I need some participation. I know we've given you a lot right now, so I need y'all to just kind of think for a second and use your brain for a minute. 1963, little bit of Trivial Pursuit here for those Gen Xers in the room. Trivial Pursuit, 1963. What happened in 1963 that you think of? You got a couple minutes.
It's close to D-Day.
A little bit farther off of D-Day. Think about somebody else. There was Kennedy. Kennedy was one of them. It's a big one. There's something that happened that you probably are not familiar with, because it happened very silently. J.R. Reynolds, who owns Camel cigarettes at the time, the #1 cigarette that was endorsed by doctors at the time, buys Hawaiian Punch. 1963 is the first year that a tobacco company will buy a food company. I say the first year because it won't stop. Eventually, we'll see that the tobacco companies would invest in the food companies, ultimately, to where they created a conglomeration of companies. I always love the one about PepsiCo. You notice what little guy in a hat that it's pointing to right there? Quaker Oats. Everybody loves their oatmeal. I love my oatmeal too, but man, we have a love affair with oatmeal, right? Let's talk a little bit about that here in just a second. What did they determine by doing what they did? They took their ability to create things that really were addictive. They figured out how to do it with our food. And the way that they figured out to do that was to begin to remove fiber from our foods. You notice how foods are enriched with fiber today? Well, why does it need to be enriched? It's because it was taken out in its natural form. In nature, bread comes packaged in fiber, rice comes packaged in fiber. We look at apples come packaged in pectin, which is an incredibly powerful fiber. I remember when my kids were little, if there was one thing that I was like going, boy, it would quiet them, is when they said, apple juice, apple juice, apple juice. Now my kids are all grown. I had no idea that I was simply giving them sugar water all that time, because I was taught as a parent, that's good and it's healthy for us. It's juice, it's the fruit. But even in nature, Dr. G's from New Orleans, she'll tell you, sugar cane comes packaged in fiber, even in nature. So let's play with this for a second. How many meals a day were you taught to eat, or were you instructed to eat from a doctor, from a teacher, from your parents? Now, don't tell me what you're eating now. What were you taught? Throw it out there.
2 snacks.
3 meals, 2 snacks. Anybody taught 6 small meals during the day? Eat like a little bird. I get that one too. Just eat all the time. You just keep doing it all the time, right? So see if this looks like your day. It's the amazing thing. We're starting with morning. How many of y'all survived sleeping last night without eating anything? Anybody? You survived sleeping? It's crazy how that worked. You survived all night. But the first thing that you had to do this morning was go get something to eat because you're supposed to have a healthy what? It's the most important meal of the day. Yeah, and what that does is when we start with heart healthy foods like Cheerios, oatmeal, a bagel, we spike our blood sugar because that converts to glucose. As Dr. G said, those simple carbohydrates, breads, rice, pastas, even starches like potatoes and corn. And when that happens, insulin has to get that under control. So later in the day, because our insulin pathways are disrupted, you start to get tired and craving because your body can't use that glucose for energy. So you go grab a low-fat granola bar because low fat is supposed to be healthy, right? And we spike again. Then how many of y'all run your Costco errands at lunchtime? You grab the hot dog meal for $1.50 and you get a Diet Coke because you know what? We gotta offset that really bad hot dog, but nobody's talking about the bun, the processed bread that we're eating in that flour. That's what's spiking our blood glucose, sending it even farther up. Mid-afternoon, you go to the workroom hoping there's maybe a stale donut that you can grab or some pretzels or something to keep you going. And then your partner or spouse calls you up and says, I didn't plan for dinner. Can you go pick something up? And you go, okay, I'll go to Cane's because that's chicken and that's healthy, right? You get home, you feed the family, and then you go, you know what? I ate healthy all day, so I'm going to go grab a bowl of ice cream. Does that sound like anybody in the room right there? You've lived that day, maybe once, maybe twice. It's all right. You can admit that. But what we did is we kept high all day. But this is what we're talking about. Insulin has to respond to how we're eating. All right. And it responds first to the carbohydrates because that spikes our glucose levels the most. Next, protein and fat take the longest, they spike the least, and they are slower to digest. So what we find ourselves doing, something we really kind of talked about, we start with a high carb diet. What's the first thing you grab out of a McDonald's bag? Just admit it, y'all, come on. We're honest here. We grab the French fries, and if you got a chocolate milkshake, you're going to dip it in that too, right? So here's the thing. The insulin is released from our pancreas. That's what your pancreas is going to do. But when we do it consistently, our cells, as we've talked about, become resistant. Eventually, the sugar is stored in fat and releases in the blood. And so we feel tired and hungry all day. So as we talk about this, what can we do to reverse insulin resistance? Because insulin resistance is ultimately diabetes on steroids. Well, I'm going to throw this one out to you first. How many of y'all would agree that UCLA is a good university? Give me a raise of hands. You think UCLA, you would hire somebody if they got a degree from UCLA? How many? Y'all wouldn't? Okay, everybody, okay. How about the Ohio State? Would you hire somebody from Ohio State? I mean, forget about your football rivalries, okay? Just please, just get that out of our heads for a minute. All right. UCLA, if we eat in a certain order, it helps to control your blood glucose. What is that order? The Ohio State, eat veggies and protein first, leave carbs last. The CDC even, who declares that diabetes is an epidemic, so is obesity. The carb that helps you manage diabetes is fiber. Your grandparents were right. Eat your veggies first. My grandmothers did not sound like that, bless their hearts. But we got to make sure that we understand exactly what's happening. Now, if you'll remember this slide right here, 93% of Americans aren't metabolically healthy, but here's the other one. 95% of us Americans do not get enough fiber. What is one of the fastest cancers that's growing in millennials? It's colon cancer. I lost my first wife to colon cancer. I know the personal effects of insulin resistance. And I know that we did not eat the way that I teach today. Somebody asked me on TikTok, was sitting with their daughter apparently. She said, would you teach your daughter to eat this way? I said, my daughter is now an adult. My daughter has eating issues. I would have so taught her how to eat this way had I known. And the information has been there all along, and it's been in front of our face. How much should we be eating? Well, women under 50, 25 grams. Women over 20, 21 grams. Men over 50, 38 grams. Men over 50, 30 grams. We're talking about 8 cups of broccoli. I like that. I don't like that much broccoli. Right? So what are we going to do? Well, if we would simply start by eating correctly, start adding those vegetables first. That is huge. Fibrous vegetables first, then proteins and fats, making a priority of proteins. That is between 0.7 and 1 gram. I always like to just think 1 gram. So when I was 200 pounds, the goal for me was 130 to 150 grams. I met that in 4 months. I didn't eat less. I just started to eat correctly, and my body became metabolically healthy. I put those carbs last at the end of the meal. Now, there's a lot of things that we can do, but that's really the important thing. But I know this is one that probably the science behind it is something you may or may not see. We hinted at this is important. So the way that it looks is that when we're eating in the correct meal order with fiber, proteins, fats, and then carbs, that food goes into our small intestines, into the GI tract. That is the primary place that we find that GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide, that catabolic hormone that is a regulatory hormone, gets secreted. We don't have not enough GLP-1. There's not a deficiency in GLP-1. We're just not making it because we're not eating correctly. They're actually finding now that the pancreas is actually will secrete GLP-1 as well. But when we eat correctly in that order, that's where it works. And we eat till we're satiated, and that's the incretin action that signals to the brain that we are full and don't eat as much anymore. And we stay in that healthy state. So that's the how. But what about dealing with the insulin levels? Because here's the secret thing about blood sugar. It takes 4 hours for blood sugar to come back down to normal. But for insulin, it takes 10 to 12 hours. So think about this for a second. If we're eating 3 meals a day, 2 healthy snacks, when does our blood sugar come down? And when does our insulin level reach healthy, normal levels? In our current environment and the way we've been taught to eat, it doesn't. Don't be shocked by it. A 2-meal method of eating changes significantly what happens. The studies actually show that when we are doing intermittent fasting, rather than simply calorie counting, we're addressing our hormones, not our willpower. And what we're doing is we're going to eat until we're full. I love fried chicken. I love fried catfish. And don't get between me and my mama's banana pudding, or I'm going to open a can and whoop ass on somebody. I don't eat that every day. But because I've learned to eat correctly, and I'm eating less often, I'm not eating less. When you're eating your goal weight in protein, you're not eating less, are you? I mean, you sit there, most people go, oh my gosh, I can't eat so much protein. It's a lot of food. Guess what? I'm not hungry all the time. So what's happening is when we are doing intermittent fasting, we're helping our bodies to reset our insulin. Now, with that, there's many different types of ways to do this. I teach, and for most of us as Americans, 16 and 8 or 18 and 6 is the easiest thing that I found to help people understand how to do that. So usually eating their breakfast around 11 o'clock, then eating again around 6 o'clock without snacks through the day, because we're eating until we're full, and we're eating foods that keep us full longer. By doing so, we're moving from metabolic inflexibility to metabolic flexibility. We move from being a sugar burner to burning fat for fuel. Remember those high insulin levels? When insulin is high, I tell people fat will defy. It's like your fat cells have a bodyguard. All right? Insulin is the bodyguard of those fat cells. When insulin comes low now, the fat will go. We can burn it. It decreases the inflammation. It decreases blood glucose levels, decreases blood pressure, increases the human growth hormone, and
Yeah, so one of the things that is not up there, it increases your stem cells. So how this happens is when you hit autophagy, and that's at the 16-8, if you're doing a 16-8 or an 18-6 fasting schedule, at 16 hours fasting, your body reaches autophagy. And the longer you go, the better and enhanced it is. So with autophagy, you're increasing human growth hormone, but you're also stimulating your own stem cells. Also with autophagy, it's like your body does its own house cleaning. You get rid of the old stuff. The cells clean out themselves. They just get rid of all that junk, and they're able to function better. You're able to, that's where we start to see decreased inflammation. We no longer are tired all the time, and things like that. There's a lot of other benefits as well, but when we start becoming metabolically flexible, Your body knows what to do with the food, and it's automatic. You go from a glucose burner to a fat burner.
I'll add to it the
Yeah.
autophagy, because I mentioned a couple of times the mitochondria. It will also get rid of the old, less working
Yeah,
mitochondria. So it clears out that stuff, increasing your energy.
But it can be intimidating. And so are there ways to bridge the gap? There are. There's been multiple things that have been shown to bridge the gap. We come at it with a particular approach that we want to unpack for you that you may not have heard of.
right. And Coach Ken mentioned, fiber's great. I love broccoli. I love salad. I love stuff like that. But I can't consume the amount of fiber that's necessary for this to happen because our food system is different. It's different than what it was before. All that fiber's been stripped. And if you see anything on a box with a barcode in a bottle or a bag, and it says fortified with all kinds of nutrients, fortified with iron, fortified with fiber, fortified with protein, put it back. It is, I always like to say, and we talk about this a lot, it's a chemical shitstorm. Because that's what they did. Why are you taking stuff out? A protein source at the grocery store does not advertise protein. Look on a ribeye steak. It's not gonna tell you it's protein. We know it's protein. But they're not gonna advertise that. So anything that's fortified, don't even bother. And keto is not on a box. Keto is a state. It is ketosis. It is burning fat for fuel. It's not on a box or with a barcode. So how do we bridge the gap? Lifestyle changes. Number one, fasting. Food sequencing, fiber, protein, fats, save the carbs for last. However, that's hard for me. I live, to eat. That I'm from New Orleans. We eat all kinds of things. And my biggest thing is chocolate. I love it. I love sweets and things like that. So I have to be very careful. So with these nutraceuticals that we're gonna talk about in a moment, they help keep your body in check. That's what helped me to reverse my diabetes. Also helped my husband, and Charlene has also, you've gotten some results. Yeah. And we're all on our own separate journey. I mean, and it takes, depending on how sick you are, which brings up another question, how long does it take? Depends. But let's talk about these nutraceuticals.
Yeah, let's jump into that.
Yeah.
So there is a solution. And the thing about it is many times we're going to hear so much about so many things. This is about science. This is about being respectful to the medical community, is the fact that everything that we're talking about today is based on the research studied multiple places. And we're going to unpack that in the time that we have. We're going to kind of fly through this, but I want you to know this, we're going to knock this out. So this is a solution that is all natural. It has 5 patents on it. The clinical studies exist on it. We're going to show you some of those as well. These are in the provider's digital desk reference. So your doctors, you're familiar with this. We've actually referred to it in many of these. They are safe and natural. They come with a 90-day money-back guarantee. In addition to that, they are HSA and FSA approved. They turn to be cost neutral and are in over 60 countries. And here's the crazy part about it. Everything that we talked about, intermittent fasting. We're fasting through this period. Dr. G is going to talk about the Unimate, which is an yerba mate concentrate. All right, 2-meal method of eating with fiber first. And it's that simple. It really is that simple. Dr. G, would you unpack that a little bit more with this?
So Unimate, it is an yerba mate derivative from Argentina, Brazil. And it undergoes a 5-step purification process. So you are getting the purest form without herbicides and pesticides of this Unimate. One thing that Unimate has is chlorogenic acid in it. It's found also in coffee. Chlorogenic acid is found in a good premium quality cup of coffee. However, this chlorogenic acid helps to stimulate your own body's GLP-1 by up to 70%. So you're getting the benefits of helping your body burn fat for fuel.
And that studies at Brigham Young University.
Yeah.
So that's important. We're looking at things that have the clinical studies behind them.
So another chlorogenic acid is polyphenol. Other polyphenols that are in it is ferulic acid. And another thing that it does have caffeine, I'm going to tell you that. However, it's different than a synthetic caffeine because the natural occurring caffeine in your mate, along with another component of this Unimate, is theobromine. And it helps give you a steady release of energy as you are drinking it. That's what you see in our bottles here that we have throughout the time you're drinking it. You're not going to get a crash and burn, not like coffee. Instantly, and then done. Doesn't work that way. The other thing about theobromine, and when I found this out, game changer. Theobromine helps to remineralize tooth enamel. similar to the effects of fluoride without the side effects. So there's that. And I can't find any literature on this, but if it's remineralizing and helping to strengthen your teeth, it's probably doing the same thing to your bones. Okay, so along with that, there's mate savamins, and there's also, which help with fat metabolism and increase your own metabolism to work better. And then there's also, it's an antioxidant because it helps with that, but it also helps to reduce your blood pressure.
Right. The other one is balance. Charlene, would you speak to this one for us a little bit? We'll unpack it a little more too.
Balance is a unique made of 7 blends of plants that are both soluble and insoluble, and then they throw a vitamin in there that includes vitamin B12. This, when taken pre-meal, so you take it before you meal, it decreases that insulin spike, thereby decreasing your blood glucose. It also, over time, will decrease your triglycerides, decrease cholesterol, and it has the overall effect of like a natural metformin. It has some patents that can't be duplicated. It also helps you to feel fuller. It strengthens your immune system and maintains a healthy metabolism.
Right. So let's unpack that a little bit more. Like I said, we're going to go back to this, the PDR.net. Y'all are familiar with the PDR.net? I suspect, yes, most of y'all. So much of what we reflect right here is, this was for Dr. G, is understanding the provider's digital reference. This is the only product of its kind that directly, 2 of them that actually will directly address the issue of insulin resistance. Fiber is the only one that's on there. So while a doctor might recommend Metamucil, it's not in the PDR.net. I challenge you to look up that, or Benefiber, but you will find the balance in there because it does have the clinical studies, such as the one that was shown in Metabolism magazine that was done. This is done at the Cleveland Clinic. Their conclusion at this study was that such a product, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially reduce or decrease the need and/or dose for lipid-lowering prescription drugs. Now, again, I know we're running out of time. We're getting close to the end, and y'all are staying with me. But I want you to get a word picture for a second here, because I need you to hold this one. Don't know what your faith belief is, and that's quite all right. But I will say it this way. When God created the world, did he create a pharmaceutical company, or did he create plants first? So if a fiber product can reduce the need for lipid-lowering drugs, what are we talking about? Fiber is something that we should be having. Second thing, this is done at the University of Sydney under the direction of Jenny Brand Miller. She actually did 2 studies on this one as it relates to blood sugar. Now, if y'all know, this is the home of the glycemic index at the University of Sydney. And what she saw is basically you took a piece of bread and it turned it from a bad food into an okay food, similar to metformin. In more recent studies, we find that it decreases postprandial glucose spike between 37 and 40%. So even better when drunk within, I just use the right one, within 5 minutes of a meal, as opposed to 10 to 15 minutes, it improves it even better. So again, I'm going to ask you a question. When God creates the world, or when the Big Bang Theory happens, was it plants or was it a pharmaceutical company that showed up first? Plants. Fiber comes on the scene first. And so the research and the science and the study shows that the more we get fiber in our diet, it is what is going to control and help things more than anything. We talked a little bit about some of the studies at Brigham Young in regards to Unimate. We find the studies independently on chlorogenic acid themselves, looking at Cyopin and other studies that have shown this one. These are 2 that actually have been done on Unimate, one in 2025 and one in 2023, about how it helps the mitochondria and the health of our human bodies by making sure and healing our metabolic diseases and disorders and regulating that. These are the studies that we are looking at, and these are just a few of them. We have a choice to make. Lifestyle changes are a pill for every ill. I suspect most of y'all know what most people choose. It's hard. It's hard to be in that environment. But there is answers. And there is no human condition made better by poor nutrition. And no human condition made worse by better nutrition. When we talk about metabolic health, You go and look at anything that you're going to learn and find out about it. And it ultimately is going to come back to this. Your metabolic health and the metabolic health of your patients relates to how the human body is processing the food and drink that we consume. And if what we are consuming, and if what our patients are consuming, if what you and I are consuming is not aiding our metabolic health, there is no naturally occurring bags of Cheetos in nature. As much as I wish Nutter Butters were part of nature, they are not. Right? It's not helping us, but there is a solution. Now, I know we're not really going to have time for questions at this point because I know we've got somebody coming in, but the one thing that you will know is that we will be here. So we actually have our website as well. If you'd like to know more, but we have a booth downstairs and we would love to talk to everybody. Any of you all that have questions. And tomorrow we actually are doing another presentation in the morning. We have one of our partners from the lower 48 that's actually flying up here today from Colorado who knows the science of this stuff left and right that will be here. So if you're also somebody that is interested in figuring out how can I help more people, we'll be talking more about that tomorrow. You can come see us anytime and Healthy Together and Feeling Great. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope this has been educational and helpful and helping improve your understanding of metabolic health. Thank you all for your time today.
Started in City.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I did that whole thing.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Who's your coach?
Dana Estelle. from
Oh,
Canada.
yes. I've watched the Danish.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I was becoming her.
Right.
And I really am metabolic and healthy, like all these aches and pains and things that I didn't have from an arrhythmia, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I have to do something about this. So I was researching it and then when you came brought this, I'm like, oh, let me know what it's about. So I'm kind of excited about this. And I started the intermittent fasting, you know. I lost my bottle yesterday on the plane.
Yes. Where do you live? Where do you live?
I live in Oregon.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Wonderful. You're able to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was your name, by the way?
Barbara.
Barbara? Great to meet you.
Thank you,
Great to
Ken.
meet you. Absolutely.